Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the mental health and personality factors that may be at work in the Anders Behring Breivik case. Breivich was responsible for killing 77 people in Norway in July 2011. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put a link to Patreon in the description for this video. So first I'll go through the background of Breivich, look at the timeline of the crimes, and then take a look at the mental health and personality factors. Anders Behring Breivik was born on February 13, 1979 in Oslo, Norway. His father was a diplomat for the Norwegian embassy in London, and his mother was a nurse. He spent the first year of his life in London, after which his parents divorced and his mother took him to Norway. He would end up staying with his mother as his father's attempts to gain custody were unsuccessful. The behavior of Anders' mother was the focus of a lot of attention when he was young. She reported that her dislike of her son started when she was pregnant with him. She believed that he was kicking her on purpose. After he was born, she believed that he had an intent to destroy her and was fundamentally evil. She thought he was clingy and demanding, and she left him alone for long periods of time when he was young. So we see a substantial level of maltreatment here. When Anders was 4 years old, 2 reports were filed about his mental health. Mental health professionals assessed Anders and his mother. They came up with some disturbing findings. They said his mother often told Anders that she wished he was dead. They indicated that he had a smile that was not connected to his feelings. And they reported that his mother was aggressive and projected sexual fantasies onto him. They also said that she had borderline personality disorder and depression. They noted that Anders' mother had sudden mood changes, going from polite and friendly to vicious and cruel in an instant. His mother evidently hated all men and projected this hatred onto Anders. The mental health professionals strongly urged that Anders be removed from his mother's care, but child welfare services did not think the relationship was harmful. Anders was arrested a few times in his early teens, mostly for vandalism. He was fined a couple of times but never went to jail. During that same time, he started focusing a lot on his physical appearance, lifting weights and taking steroids. Anders was found unfit for military service, so he was provided an exemption from conscription. He went to work in the customer service department of a company, and as part of his job, he talked to people from all over the world. His coworkers said that he was grandiose, but a great worker. They noted that he seemed to have a dislike for customers who had a South Asian or Arab origin. After the attacks he perpetrated in 2011 that I'll talk about in a moment, Anders claimed that he started planning them in 2002. He earned money by starting his own computer programming company, and eventually he tried to obtain weapons illegally, but was unable to do it. So he then decided to try to obtain them legally from Norway. He ended up buying a Glock 34. This is a semi-automatic handgun that's chambered in 9x19mm, so 9mm Luger. And he bought a Ruger Mini 14. Anders then moved to a farm about 90 miles northeast of Oslo. He mostly kept to himself as he purchased fertilizer, explosive primers, and other chemicals used to build bombs. Anders assembled the bomb and put it in a van. He drove the van to central Oslo and parked it among several government buildings. He detonated it, and the explosion killed 8 people. Now, at this point, we see he's dressed in a police uniform. He goes to Uoya Island, and he went to a campsite there for the Workers' Youth League. He asked some of the people on the island to gather around. They thought he was there because of the bombing, like he was there to provide additional security. He removed weapons from the bag he was carrying and opened fire. He continued firing intermittently for over an hour, killing 69 people. Anders would eventually surrender without incident after the police arrived on the island and confronted him. He did take a couple seconds to decide, though, as they had their weapons drawn on him. He told the police he wanted to start a revolution and take his country back from immigrants. Anders was eventually convicted and sentenced to the maximum penalty available in Norway, which is a 21-year term with a 10-year minimum. The term can be extended indefinitely, and I strongly suspect that's going to happen in this case, but one never knows for sure. Now moving to the mental health and personality factors. Anders was found criminally insane by mental health professionals. They said he had paranoid schizophrenia. They said he was psychotic, he had a lack of empathy, inappropriate or constricted affect, he was compulsive, grandiose, delusional, he would make up words, and he thought he was a great warrior and a knight. They concluded that he was homicidal. I'm not sure somebody needs a degree to figure that one out. The behavior kind of gave away that he was homicidal. Other mental health professionals then assessed Anders, and they determined he had narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, and that he was not psychotic. So this is a fairly common occurrence we see at trials, especially when people commit serious crimes. We see mental health professionals on both sides arguing about the presence or absence of psychosis. Now later we would see another mental health professional diagnosed Anders with narcissistic personality disorder, paranoid psychosis, and autism spectrum disorder. So we see a good deal of disagreement here about what actually was happening with him. All the mental health professionals were very sure of their diagnoses. This is also fairly common in these types of trials. The experts are quite confident in their assessment. The court would eventually rule that he was not psychotic. About an hour and a half before the crimes, Anders emailed a manifesto with a length of 1,518 pages to over 1,000 email addresses. In it, Anders said that moderates and conservatives would like his work. He had instructions on how to read and distribute it. It was almost polite in nature, the way he kind of laid it out. His experience with computer software really comes through there. He talked about how he wanted to protect Europe from multiculturalism. He said that political correctness was evil. He believed that innocents would die as a result of trying to fight multiculturalism. Overall, this manifesto was formatted consistently. There was some level of attention to detail that he paid, and that was evident in this work. It's hard to imagine this work coming from somebody who had trouble organizing their thoughts. So summing up the work, Anders is essentially a right-wing extremist. He also posted a 12-minute video online. Anders was influenced by Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. He referred to himself as being a prominent member of a large organization. The difficulty here is that the organization does not exist. In the manifesto, he interviewed himself as if he were a hero. So we see the narcissism evident here. Not long before the attack, he visited his former stepmother and told her he was going to do something that would make his father proud. Anders reveals something about his thinking immediately after the shooting and then again in prison. Immediately after the shooting, when he was being interrogated, he complained about a 5mm cut on his finger, saying that it needed to be treated immediately. He indicated that it was from a piece of skull that struck his finger after he shot a victim in the head at close range. He was told to undress so he could be photographed. He was standing there trying to look macho, thrusting his chest out toward the camera and assuming a bodybuilding pose, trying to make his muscles bulge out as much as he could. Moving to his time in prison, we see what's really stood out here for Anders is his incessant complaining about prison conditions. Anders filed a lawsuit against the government of Norway, complaining about a number of things, but mostly about how bad prison was. I'll talk about just a few items they listed here. He was held in isolation. He didn't like that. He was separated from visitors by a glass screen. Except his mother, he was allowed to see her in person, but she died a few years after that. He was handcuffed too often. He complained about that. He said he was provided a PlayStation 2, and they did not upgrade him to a PlayStation 3. He was provided this rubber pen, which evidently was there to prevent him from stabbing himself or other people. He said this pen was an almost indescribable manifestation of sadism. The guards were conducting inspections too frequently, and they were waking him up. The guards were rushing him when he was brushing his teeth by tapping their feet. His coffee was cold, some of his food was cooked in a microwave, and he had been denied moisturizing lotion for his skin. Interestingly, many people believed he had a good point about the isolation, but the other items are largely considered unrealistic. I'm not sure it would sound any more ridiculous if he said his fuzzy bunny slippers were not fuzzy enough and they were serving the wrong type of wine with dinner. I wonder how his attorneys felt representing him through this trial, with his claims being so narcissistic I wonder if they were reevaluating their career choice. I hope they didn't lose faith in the justice system. Defense attorneys are important. Not surprisingly, this lawsuit was dismissed. So in terms of mental health, I'll talk about two theories here. Both could be wrong, and both are unusual. So neither one would be expected. They roughly align with the two theories put forward by the mental health professionals during the trial. So the first theory says that Anders' behavior is consistent with psychosis. Perhaps he had paranoid schizophrenia or delusional disorder or something else like that. This explains a lot of his behavior. The paranoia, the delusional beliefs, and some of his coldness could be explained by a disorder like schizophrenia. The challenge with schizophrenia, though, is that he really seems too organized. He doesn't appear to have disorganized thoughts, and even though his affect is flat, he doesn't really have negative symptoms like we would expect with schizophrenia. He does react to people, he's spontaneous. Negative symptoms would look more like somebody being in their own world, completely disconnected. Although one could argue that sometimes he does appear that way as well. The second theory says that Anders is not psychotic, but what we see here is an extreme manifestation of narcissism. Narcissism, like all constructs in personality, runs on a continuum. Even when somebody's highly narcissistic, they will still have some degree of empathy, even if it's a very small amount. But what if somebody could reach a pure level of narcissism? What would that look like? What would perfect narcissism, so to speak, look like? A sense of grandiosity that puts a person above every other human being on the planet, to the point where all life has no value. Fantasy so intense that somebody believes they are a hero, the likes of which the world has never seen. No regard whatsoever for how other people feel. Intense self-centeredness that is so powerful that the person does not believe there is a need to manipulate anybody. They don't even have to try to manipulate, because that suggests that they have to work to gain something, that other people might figure out what they're doing. The perfect narcissist believes they should be handed everything automatically. Complete narcissism means no insight. The person has no ability to understand how others truly see them. Pure narcissism almost looks like delusional thinking. And in one way, it is, but it's different than what we would expect to see with illnesses like schizophrenia or delusional disorder. The delusions in this case are born out of narcissism, so an extension of grandiose narcissism, essentially. So this theory explains how Anders could be so highly functional, yet maintain beliefs that appear delusional. So this gets into an interesting area. In the world of mental health, we do see grandiose type delusions in disorders like schizophrenia and delusional disorder. How would uncontrolled narcissistic grandiosity be any different than a grandiose type delusion? Usually with grandiose delusions, the person puts themselves in a position that is totally unrealistic, like they believe they are an alien from another planet that has superpowers, or a famous actor, when they are clearly not that actor. With narcissistic grandiosity, it's more of a position that's technically possible, but very unlikely, like being a prominent member of a large organization, like we see in Anders' case. So if a person is delusional, they're usually delusional about many different things that are not necessarily related. Another way to distinguish would be to look for other symptoms of the disorder that's causing the delusions. For example, with schizophrenia, I talked about that negative affect. Even with all these ways to differentiate, it can be very difficult to distinguish perfect narcissism from delusions that come from a mental disorder. With all this in mind, this gives us a frightening look into the world of extreme narcissism, when any bit of remaining compassion and empathy is totally eradicated. It is, from one perspective, essentially death. The person's self-absorption is so intense, they have no meaningful relationships with anybody. It's like a one-way mirror. We can see in, but they can't see out. One way of thinking about this is like the person is relationally dead, and with this mentality, all they can cause is death. Extreme narcissism is worse than just somebody who looks out for themselves. It extends to an antisocial stance. Destroying others means nothing. It has no consequence. Perfect narcissism has no need for any level of true connectedness. So all other life becomes meaningless. No matter what Anders' behavior aligns with, his profile is quite frightening. The type of crime he committed with no empathy, no regard for people, the total destruction. It's a frightening capacity. So I think it does warrant further research. We have to understand why people carry out horrific acts like this. Those are my thoughts on the Anders Behring Breivik case. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.